Hello, I'm Andy Browne, Operations Manager at TLAP Media, and this is my 1972 Fender Telecaster. So we're living in England, my family, and my parents decided to move back to America. And we took a ship, the Rotterdam, from Liverpool to Miami. This whole trip took about a month. We went through the Bahamas, and it was a not pleasure or a cruise ship, but a liner coming over with. So the crew took a liking to us. They were Cuban, I think. Me and my brother, we were just little lads. And they would show us the inwards and the bows of the ship, and they took us to. They said, "Do you want to go see us throw out the garbage?" And we said, "Sure." Now we're just little. They're throwing out all the garbage, and the sharks are following the ship, and they're eating the garbage, and it was kind of terrifying at our age, right? And we're watching all this, and so I started asking about sharks. And they were cooking us these meals, fried bananas and rice, which I'm still trying to find the recipe for. And they gave us our first Coca-Colas and Sprites. In England, they didn't have them at the time. So I had this great interest in sharks when we got back to America. And started studying sharks. And I wanted to be a marine biologist. And then Jaws came out. And I snuck in to see it. And now I'm scared to take a bath, still, after all these years. I mean, I think I've seen Jaws 457 times. And yes, I probably would be studying in the, South Pacific somewhere. But these sharks, I have a problem with. Born in Miami, and my family, all of them, are from Birmingham area in England. Solihull, Stratford-upon-Avon, all these local towns surrounding Birmingham. So I was a young lad going to school there. They used to make me wear this gray vest and this maroon tie and little shorts. In the winter, we would walk to school, and I never understood why we had to wear shorts in the winter walking to school. Now, I had this aversion to vests and ties all my life. In fact, I never would wear them. And then I got a little older, and I have this great love for vests and ties now. And you start, as you mature, you start looking back on your life going, what made me who I am? And I think that those English school days shaped my being, And I used to see David Bowie and the Beatles and Bob Marley on television, on the BBC or ITV when I was young, and I thought, this is very strange. Strange how later in life, those people that I thought when I was a lot younger became some of my heroes, And I look back on those videos now with great fondness because I was like, I remember seeing these when I was 4, 5, 6, whatever it might have been in England, and I was like, wow, So life has this great way of connecting not only yourself, but other people together, So how we came back to the United States, my parents came over, I guess, for the first time. And this is in the 60s, I guess. And they wanted to become U.S. citizens. And America basically said, you don't have enough money, go back to England, come back when you can be productive citizens over here. So they went back to England, and I remember in England, my dad was driving a bread truck. He was working 3 different jobs. He saved up a lot of money, 10 grand maybe, and then we came back, and then they became U.S. citizens. And we landed. We were in Miami for a bit, and then we were in Cleveland during the mid-'70s, early '70s. And my dad might have known a few people. There's a movie called Kill the Irishman. My dad knew that lot of people. And once they started asking him for favors within the business that he was in, we moved to Louisville. And we were in Louisville during forced busing. And we saw a lot of things and people that maybe we weren't so particularly fond of. There's a lot of KKK rallies and all that kind of stuff. So my dad goes, we're going to Atlanta. So we wound up in Atlanta. I forgot the year. Maybe I was 11-ish, 12-ish. So Atlanta's been really great as far as growing up. And we were in Dunwoody and Roswell, and then obviously downtown. The time in Louisville was a bit, let's call it, it was scary for me as being as young as I was. My best friend in school was Stephen Whitehouse. He was a skinny kid like me who happened to be non-white. So we got along like gold. But then there was other kids that weren't so pleasant as Stephen. And they might have been, well, let's just say they were troubled kids. And but I remember Stephen with fondness because we were talking about him becoming president one day. And I go, what are you going to do if you go become president? He goes, well, the first thing I'm going to do is paint the White House black because it's been white long enough. Now, this is quite a few years ago. And I thought, that's super, super cool, you know? So I don't ever know what happened to Stephen Whitehouse, but I do know for about 6 months we were really, really good buddies. I did meet Colonel Sanders there during that time, and that's one of my claims to fame. My mom knew his family, so we went to the original the restaurant that he started. And when you talk about fried chicken and coleslaw and mashed potatoes being some of the greatest in the world, that was a very, very, very pleasant eating experience. And Colonel Sanders, he was so nice. So that was awesome, Louisville. So my first musical instrument, I had a great interest in the guitar because both my brothers played. And they are absolute amazing on guitar and writing songs. And so they were a huge influence on me. So at about 14, I got my first guitar, Hagstrom, and my brother had given me that, and Dean, my middle brother. And so I started learning on that. And then Stephen, my older brother, gave me a Fender Telecaster, which is a very special Fender Telecaster. We'll get into that story later. And I was blessed because I was just given the right instruments at the right time. And so it all worked, you know. How the first band that I was in came to be 14 and practicing in my room, listening to Bob Marley and the Rolling Stones and a whole slew. Curtis Mayfield has always been a great, great influence on me. Just a number of bands. At this time, the punk rock era in England had kind of been over for a bit, so it was coming over to the States. So the Clash, I love the Sex Pistols and different bands like that. The energy of those bands, again, still with like Lynyrd Skynyrd and some Southern bands that I really love. But we put this band together, the Nightporters, and we played professionally, I think, when I was 15, was our first gig at 688. And things seemed to work. So we had a few personnel changes, and it all came together maybe 16, 17. The drinking age was a bit younger than in Atlanta. I think it was 18. So we had a whole slew of young kids come in there from high school, and maybe a few sneaking in. And our friend, Chuck Walston, was a writer at the Atlanta Journal. He wrote about us on one of the weekend sections, a big, nice article. And after that, things just kind of exploded. And then we'll get into opening for The Clash and REM, great guys out of Athens. We hung out with those guys quite a bit. The Replacements, who were really big at the time, touring with them. I mean, I'm doing a lot of local gigs with the Roys and the Swimpool Q's, RuPaul, a number of local Atlanta bands. The rock scene back then was just, everybody was together. It didn't matter what kind of music you were playing if you were out on that scene, original music scene. And this 688 was ground zero for this implosion of great music. I have to mention the Blue Rat Art Gallery. We lived in Pershing Point at the time. And that was 17th and West Peach Street. And that was maybe 7 or 8 apartment blocks of artists, musicians, just people that were, it was like being at Andy Warhol's warehouse, a whole block. And it was just amazing. So DAngelo Dixon is a very, very good friend of mine, and I've known him since I've been 17, but he was a photographer for Mother's Finest. When I moved to LA in 93, he got me into production for what I'm doing, and we were in LA together for quite a number of years. He lives in, I never know where he lives now, but he's in some island somewhere having a good time. But DAngelo Dixon is absolute gold. He was part of the Blue Red Art Gallery. The Nightporters, my brother had come up with that name, my oldest brother, and it stuck. And as I said, we probably opened some doors that, for our age, were very impressive. The Nightporters. You know, like I said, we were very young. And it was,
what kind of music were you?
So personally, I write the songs, and we were getting a lot of inspiration from English bands, Madness, the Specials, the Selector, the Clash, and the Pistols. This cross-cultural punk rock phenomenon that happened in England, where it was reggae and punk, and it's like it brought out the best in people, because what it did was bring people together. And so I'm heavily influenced in all my music by English bands and a few American bands I particularly like. But if people, I always point back to England and say, you know, that's my heart, that's my soul. Follow For Now. So I used to go see Follow For Now. Billy Fields, our keyboard player, played in Follow For Now. I don't want to use the word I hated Follow For Now, because what I'm doing is a dichotomy here. I used to go see Follow For Now and think, how are these guys so fucking incredible, right? Because they were fucking incredible. And I don't like to use the word jealous, but they were so good, and they were so inspirational, and they were such pleasant people. As I said, Billy Fields plays with us now. He played in Follow For Now, and he's one of the great joy musicians in my life. But Follow For Now are one of the best bands that I've ever seen, not only from Atlanta, but in my life. So how they didn't become rock gods, it's beyond me. So,
did you know David Ryan Harris?
I was in the studio with David Ryan Harris. We were recording in one studio, and he was in the other. And David has always been a super, super pleasant guy. And I walked in on him. He was recording a few demos. And the fact that he had written 3 songs in the time that we took us to set up, again, I'm going, I give up. But David Ryan Harris, so nice and so pleasant. And, you know, he's been playing with John Mayer for quite a long time and everything. But again, he is just phenomenal. Person, player, songwriter, yes, amazing. How those bands back in the day influenced each other was the fact that, so everybody was just interested in the music, and as I said, the reason I really love music is it crosses barriers. It brings people together. And it seems to me back then, you had more people just enjoying that energy, right? It didn't matter if it was reggae, rock, jazz, or new wave, whatever it might have been. Everybody was just going out and having a good time and kind of enjoying everybody else's experience, you know? And I don't know, I don't get out all the time now, but I don't know if that same cross-cultural, cross-musical, cross-barriers is existing in this day and age, right? Because everybody's really concerned with this genres and was it this, is it that? And one of my great heroes is Miles Davis. I saw him in an interview, and he said they were trying to put genres on him or whatever, and he said, look, music's either good or bad, period. And I totally agree with that. And it's either listenable and it's pleasant and you like it, or it's whatever it is. And so Miles kind of nailed that one. Yeah. So Anthony Hamilton. I didn't know who he was in 2016. My friends were playing on West Peach Street, Driving and Crying, who had invited me to their show with a couple of my friends. And so Tim, the bass player, a good buddy of mine, he says, well, let's go. I'll meet you after the show over at the W Hotel, where he was staying. And so we met up, and we talked for a while, and we had some food. And it was 1:30 in the morning, so I was getting ready to leave. And I came out of the bathroom, and there was a very large man in front of me. And I asked him to get out of my way. And I heard a voice behind me saying, don't be fucking talking to my man like that. And I turned around and I said, don't fucking talk to me like that. And so the bodyguard, who it turns out was looking down, smiling at me, almost laughing at this point. And so this smaller man called me over and said, let me talk to you. So he's sitting there with two beautiful girls. I didn't know who he was. And he says, what's your name? What do you do? I said, well, my name's Andy Browne. I'm a songwriter, a singer. He goes, so am I. And the conversation proceeded. He asked me, I think he said, this is December 26, 2016. I think he just said, well, I'm a singer too. I just played the Fox. And I said, yeah, I played the Fox with The Clash, a while back with my band. And then he asked me who The Clash is. And I said, well, if you don't know The Clash, you don't know too much about music, do you? And he laughed. And then he asked me if I had anything on YouTube. And I did. And I had my phone and I gave it to him with that song, Down, Come On Down. And the two girls then grabbed my hand and took me over to the other couch. And Anthony proceeded to listen to the song 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And then he called me over and says, this is not you. And I sung a little above it. I said, well, there it is. And he goes, wow. In the meantime, the girls had showed me who he was. So when I came back, I said, Mr. Hamilton. He said, no, it's Anthony. So he said, this is like Grammy-worthy material. And I said, I saw his Grammys as the girls showed me the pictures. So we talked for a while. And he was so humble and so nice. And he didn't have to give me 20 minutes of his time. The bodyguard was just laughing all over this, right? Because, and he asked me for a favor. He said, when you go home, will you listen to Charlene? That's my song. I said, I will. I have been listening to Charlene weekly, daily, since 2016, and everything else he's done. He made me one of his biggest fans. He turned me on to, he was so cool and humble, and he gave me he didn't have to give me 20 minutes, but he did. And so I am so grateful. He knew that I didn't know who he was, and maybe I just treated him like I treat anybody else, and he was great, and he was funny. With the Nightporters, we did our couple years here. Everything was great. We did some tours, and there was some, as I said, we were young pups, and there might have been some problems, but we were working through those personnel problems. And our drummer, Paul Linz, who I'm great friends with this day, might have been getting in a little too much trouble. And so we parted ways. And in that, Paul and Tim Nielsen, the bass player, went on to Driving and Crying. And maybe it wasn't the right move for me to make at the time, but it was a decision that kind of, we couldn't continue doing what we were doing and bailing somebody out of jail. So Paul did some time, and he's like one of my brothers now, and he learned his lesson. So, he went through it. So what broke us up was basically, there was too much drama going on. In '93, an opportunity came up for me to go to LA. And it was kind of exciting because I didn't know what LA was going to be like. And I got really lucky. As I said, my friend DAngelo Dixon brought me into production. And then I was all over the world doing stuff that I didn't think I was capable of doing, but I did it. So
when you say production, talk about which part of production. What were you doing?
So the way I got into production was I was in LA, Hollywood, and living in Burbank. And my friend DAngelo Dixon had called me and said, "Do you want a job?" And I said, "Yeah, that would be great." So I went out to about an hour east of LA. I walked into the warehouse, and there was these huge video walls everywhere from U2's Europa tour. And I've always loved movies. And so I saw this video on these walls, and I was going, wow, this is cool. I didn't know what it was. I was getting $10 an hour to clean up a warehouse. And about a week later, he said, well, I can book you on this job with us. And I said, okay. So we're going to Bakersfield Business Convention. So I thought I was going to make $100, $150 a day or whatever it was. And so we were there 9 days. They said, can you drive a boom fork? I said, sure. Can you drive a truck? Sure. And I did successfully. And so we were out there for 10 days, I think. And DAngelo did my invoice. I think I got a check for $9,000. And I thought to myself, well, I can do this. So, from there, Japan, 98 Olympics, Australia, Grand Prix, Europe, just basically anywhere they needed this new video wall systems, basically all the continent of the United States, around and about Oklahoma, Texas. There's very few states that I didn't work in during the 90s. I will tell you a story. I was on tour with Van Halen in 98 maybe. And my favorite bands, or you've heard those, Van Halen, they're great at what they do, but they're not So I got a tour with Van Halen, and I was like, yeah, okay, it's a job. And I will tell you this. I've been around and played with a lot of rock stars and worked for them. And Eddie Van Halen was the kindest, funniest, most entertaining, most welcoming person that I could ever imagine. So he hit my top 3 favorite musical personnel list, right? The band, hey, they're great at what they do, but he and the bass player's roadie, and the drummer, it was like being in a family. I will tell you that they just, with welcoming arms, brought me in. The singer at the time it wasn't David Lee Roth or Sammy, it was the other guy, and I started talking about the Pistols and the Clash with him, and he politely walked away from me, so I left it at that. So I don't think he went too far after that with Van Halen anyway. So
what'd you do with the Olympics?
So there's a story. With the Olympics, I was in Japan for the 98. I did this job so we were in Tokyo, Nagano, and then they sent me to Nozawa, which is it's like the Lake Placid of Japan, where they train all these skiers and all this kind of stuff. So I was up there alone with Japanese interpreters in this small little village. And my hair at the time was maybe blonder and longer. And so I remember me and the interpreter were coming back from work that day, and it's a funny story. So these 10 or 15 young Japanese children, 7, 8, 11, were following us, and they were pointing, laughing. And I asked the interpreter, what's this about? And they said, well, they've never seen a Caucasian here, right? And so I took that as like, okay, whatever. So the next day I bought a bunch of candy, and I'm dropping it on the street like Pied Piper or whatever. And then their laughs turned to joy and excitement, which was funny. Japan, I was there 4 or 5 months, and it was an absolute joy. It was just, people would come up and ask me to speak English in all the temples and all the different places. And it's a wonderful country, wonderful people. The Atlanta Olympics, I worked, and we were doing 22-hour days. And I was working Centennial Park, the big video screen in the center screen. We were working for Nocturne Productions, which are a huge production company for touring and everything. I had friends. I was in the lighting tower on this side, and I had friends on this side working the other lighting tower. I had actually taken some pizza to them, and that young gentleman, Richard Jewell, he wouldn't let me in. Well, I had every credential that you could have in the Olympics, so I just kind of walked by him and took my pizza upstairs to my friends. I came out of the tent after 10, 15 minutes, and I looked to my right, and I'm on the corner of the tent. 5 seconds later, the bomb goes off. But I thought it was a transformer. It sounded like that. We immediately got called on the radio to go into production, and which was under the stage and everything like that. So a little scary moment, people panicking and all that stuff. I was so tired. It was just like a whatever. What do we got to do? My friend Gerrit Vanesta, who I worked with at this company for a long time, salt of the earth guy, taught me actually how to work. Him and I went in 3 or 4 days later and peeled out nails of that screen, which was a good at least 600 to 800 feet, possibly more. These nails shot over the crowd and into this video screen. So we pulled 6 or 8 of, as I said, 6 or 8 of those out. So the park was closed during those days, and yeah, that was kind of a whopper. There were other things that happened that I saw that didn't have a phone, so I can't prove those, but maybe another bomb over here as we saw the squad taken out while the park was open. But yeah, that whole event was like a war zone in a way for just a small piece, you know. Those are my Olympic stories. So the company I was working for in the 90s, I was working full-time for. They were the initiators of bringing in these first jobs we had with the Michael Jackson Jumbotron. And then we were doing things with, we had Panasonic in Japan build us a same sort of screen as the Sony Jumbotrons, which were outdoor, huge video screens that we put up with cranes, and it was like rigging work, basically. Then it turned into LED. So I worked for that company in the early 90s, mid-90s, and I started freelancing. And there was a company in Philadelphia, Mobile Wall 1. We were doing the video walls, and I was programming the video walls. And so that's kind of one of the moves that I made to Philadelphia, was working for them. Great company. We did jobs in Hawaii and just in New York, high-end fashion shows and all that kind of stuff. So I started my own company in about 2003, and that was very successful. We did drug launches for Johnson & Johnson, Aramark, Olympus cameras. We had some, and I basically was kind of amazed at what things were happening. So, and then 2008 hit, and the recession, and things, at that point. So yeah, I've worked a lot of freelance stuff. I've worked for myself, and right now I work for On Services and operations manager up at Gas South Convention Center and Arena. And I think they're a great company. I worked for them for a little while now. We're talking about the ups and downs of business, and I was confused when I had a successful company. I was making decent money, probably more than I want to talk about, and I never felt fulfilled. And I thought to myself, what is it? You have been trying or hoping for success for a long time. And I got to be honest with you, it wasn't money made in music. So I remember my brother came up to when I was living in Philadelphia, and my checkbook was open, and he saw the balance, and he goes, how did you do this? And I said, it's just money, man. And what I realized about that is there's money, and then there's successful money, and that happiness, successful money comes from something you love doing. And the other part of it, you're just shoveling shit, basically. And then anybody can shovel shit. My dad taught me anybody can shovel shit. But it's the people, the clients, that know the people that are the heart and soul of the company. That's why they're going to come back to you. And I always kept that in mind. My dad treated everybody the same. Bank presidents, clean out crews. He owned a mortgage company. And so I kept that in mind. But for some reason, I just didn't feel it when I was making a lot of money. And hey, money's nice. It's a good tool and all that stuff. But when you make it with something you love doing, it means a whole lot more. Life can be a adventurous ride. And I returned to Atlanta in 2016. And it probably wasn't the proudest moment that I've ever had. And probably shouldn't get into specifics, but I was not the person that I am now, and I was probably in a lot of places that pleasant people haven't seen. I will tell you this, those experiences enriched my life. A lot of people walk out of those places with hatred they built in them, and I had an experience in 2016 that brought me closer to whatever that is up there. And I have to say that whatever I went through, which I put those into words with some people, friends and everything, I can't explain it. And all I could tell you is those dark times turn into gratefulness and joy and pleasure. And we have to ride those out. And it's hard for me to express what I went through, as I said, because it was so confusing. One day, I'd like to help people with that story. But right now, I'll leave it at that. Lynx Deluxe was founded in about 2020. During the epidemic, and they're a pleasure and a joy to work with. We've got Lucy Erickson on bass and Brad Matson on the drums. Billy Fields from Friendlier for Now is on keyboards, and my brother Dean Brown is on guitar. And it's kind of an eclectic mix of, we've all played in bands before, and it's kind of our first EP kind of we got a lot of really, really good reviews. We confused some people because it was such, the genres were mixed up. And so we like that. And I think people now know what we were trying to do. We recorded at Capricorn Studios a little while ago, and those songs are getting finished now. They're a little more refined and a little more, okay, we can place these songs where they need. So we've been working on those songs a little while. I would like to send a shout out to Jason Becknell from Radio Tucker, who has been executive producer over these songs. Palmer Wood is a brother of mine, basically. He's been through with me through up and downs, and the same applies to him. We've seen each other through a lot of years. And the support system that Lynx Deluxe has is absolutely amazing. And I'm sending a shout out to these, especially these two guys, because their time and their effort, their money goes into this band. And I sometimes want to cry because my friends give me so much help, our help. And so we've got this new song and video coming out very shortly, which Jason's doing the video for. It's Queen Anne's Lace. And it's kind of, I don't really like to talk about what songs are about too much, but it is it's like a woven chemistry of things and people that you meet and the end result. And hopefully we learn our lessons. Hopefully we get it all. And that getting all is enjoying everything that we possibly can. I do believe that every day is a gift. I do believe that we should take it all in, good and bad, and learn our lessons. I can't comment too much on the Spotify's and the American Idol stuff. I've met a few of those singers that are from here. They're really nice people. They were younger and stuff, but we're not really too concerned. We're on Spotify and all those different things. We do videos on YouTube. And I think YouTube's really important because you can get a feel for the band and you can see them or see where their cool art and how they're putting that in motion. But really, to be honest with you, Spotify's and it's great for people that just want to listen to music. When I was a kid, we used to get these things called albums, right? And so my room was full of these albums, and it was like something you could hold and something that you had, and you took to your friend's house. And, like we would visit the local radio stations, RAS and REK and 96 Rock, and they had thousands of these things. We had some friends at record companies here when we were in the Nightporters, and we would go in their office. They'd open the door, say, take what you want, all these freebies. These things, the vinyl records were like it to me as far as music. And I don't have much of those anymore, but I can tell you this, I'm not on Spotify personally, but our band is. I just don't give a shit. I really don't. And I'd rather have X amount of people playing in front of me digging it than, I don't know, we've all seen the phones they have in China, right? The hundreds of thousands of phones. And I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I love music for its organic nature. I love people. I love performing. And I love that feedback, right? That energy. And the rest of it, well, so be it. Has the energy of the music changed? So we talked a lot about when I was younger and this kind of rock scene we were in, a mixed rock scene. But I was talking at work the other day, I was talking to Scott Waterbury. He owns a big company in Atlanta. And I was telling him about those days. And he said, well, Andy, that's still happening in hip hop right now. You're just not out there so much. And I said, Scott, good point. So with this movement, with this hip hop movement, I can relate to not all of it, but when we have music like Bob Dylan, when we have Bob Marley, when we have different elements of music that I particularly like, those are social activist songs, right? I'm not saying that every song in the world should have that message, but what I am saying is my education was listening to The Clash and their worldviews, right? And not telling you how to think, but think, right? So we're getting into this hip hop and this rap stuff, which I can't tell you I'm an expert on any of it, but what I can tell you is protest music, right? And that relates to me from the blues, the Elmore Jameses, the John Lee Hookers, B.B. Kings, this protest music, which has been the history of popular music, growing into the Stones, growing into the Beatles, growing into every great band in the world, they've had a message. And that's what I really love about like Arrested Development, one of my favorite Atlanta bands. There was a message there. You don't have to hit people over the head 100 times a day with it, but and getting into rap, there are particular songs that I go, I get it. I get the message. So this conversation I had with Scott was about it's still happening. It's just changed its flavor, And so that I can appreciate. My mom and my dad, they're a bit older now. I love them very much. My family, my brothers, as I said, they've always been a great influence. I cannot express to you the appreciation that I have for people. Tim, you for having me here. Thank you so much. But it's been, it's almost, I don't want to call a spiritual awakening that I went through in 2016 because that's a bit cliche. But the appreciation and the gratitude that I have for people has rolled over currently we're working with Lynx Deluxe, but we have an acoustic version of that with Pito Monagudo and Billy Fields. I'm also working with Dreaded Cass, who is a young female artist, hip-hop artist, and singer, which you can find her on Dreaded Cass on TikTok, C-A-S. But just working with younger artists and giving them the opportunity and sort of time that people gave me when I was younger is that notion about giving back, pay it forward. It's Paul McCartney and the Beatles used to say, you have to give and give, and it's rewarding to see young people excited about what I was excited about when I was younger, and being that person to be able to sort of say, how can I help? So I think maybe as we get a little bit older and life becomes richer, we understand those values of giving back and appreciation, the time and the love that goes into that. So there was a young girl born in England in 1863, and her name was Rosa Matilda Richter. She was a child actress, and she worked in the circus. Her parents worked in the circus, and this gentleman, Farini, who was a circus promoter, but also a performer. He was one of the first white guys to walk across the Sahara Desert. He used to walk across Niagara Falls on a high wire. He was retiring, and he invented this contraption called the human cannonball. Spring-loaded cannon with smoke and powder and all that stuff. So he asked young Rosa at 14 to become the world's first human cannonball. And she said yes. And so in London, in 1877, she was shot out of a cannon, 40, 60 feet. This was the finale for the circus, the last act, big boom. And everybody loved it. And she became the star attraction in the circus everywhere under the name Z-A-Z-E-L, Zazelle. She was the biggest. There was no TV, there was no internet, we had the circus come into town. So she was a superstar. And she worked the high wire, flipping umbrellas, dancing, all that stuff. She was a star attraction. And P.T. Barnum got a hold of her, paid her £200 a week. She was making £7 a week with Farini. So now she's riding high. In 1891, she was on the high wire and asked the riggers to pull it tighter, and they loosened it. So she fell 50 feet and broke her back. So she couldn't work in the circus anymore. That was her great love. And she married one of P.T. Barnum's promotional guys. Starr was his name. And they started this opera troupe. So she became like an opera singer. And she took something very, very bad, her back breaking, and she turned it into something very, very good. The reason I know so much about this is my back went bad for a while. And her story, I connected with the story during that time. And it's very inspirational to me how you can take something bad and make it work. But I dedicated some albums to her when I moved back here in Atlanta. The first one was called Zazelle, Andy Browne Troupe. And we're taking a few of those songs for this acoustic version of Lynx Deluxe we're doing. But my plan is to make a movie about this woman. And I think in this day and age, she's an inspiration for young girls is what she is, right? And she's an inspiration for, everyone. And I just think a period piece with, she was like the Evel Knievel of her day, basically, She actually did, she was in New York and other cities where she would jump out of 5-story burning buildings to show the firefighters how to save people into nets. Young woman jumping out at the time, women empowerment, all that kind of stuff. She was showing women can do this better, or first ones to do it, So she's kind of like a folk hero to me, and she was very inspirational and still is. So that's Rosa, that's her net, and yeah, cool. That's her story. 2016 was a difficult time personally for me for a number of various reasons. Bowie had died, and I had an aunt in England, Aunt Jackie, and she had called me early that morning and notified me on that fact. And losing Bowie was like losing, a part of the family to me. And it really affected my decision-making process. And I believe that Prince went soon after that. And it really, I have a friend who was very close to Prince for 30 years. And he was with Prince on his last show in Atlanta. And he had called me after he had met with Prince backstage on the Fox show. And he had expressed to me about Prince and his problems with prescription medications. And I felt bad because this guy wanted to get off of him, and the doctors were pushing him. And a couple of days later, Steve May, who had actually the owner of 688 Club, I might have mentioned, it called me and that Prince had died. Those deaths I took really personal. I've been lucky enough, I don't know if it's luck, but my relatives being in England, I haven't had to deal with immediate deaths in my family. My grandparents, I didn't see that through because I was in the Americas. And I've had a lot of friends maybe make wrong decisions in life and go, and those hurt. But Prince and Bowie really affected me mentally for some time. And I can't express those iconic figures. I think anybody that loves music can relate to that pain and that, just sorrow that somebody that you love so much has gone, David Bowie is still, there's not a day goes by I don't listen to something Bowie has done. And Prince for that matter too, So, Godspeed. My name is Andy Browne. I'd like to thank Tim, Tracy, and Bruce from TLAP Media. Download the TLAP Media app for the full interview.